shoeless feet, lonely eyes looking back at me. Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve? On their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons. And just like a drum, I can hear their hearts beating. I know my God won't let them be defeated. Every child has a dream to belong and be loved. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these, then they will be brave and free. Shout your name in victory. When we love the least of these, when we love the least of these. Break our hearts once again. Help us to remember when we were only children hoping for a friend. Won't you look around? These are the lives that the world has forgotten, waiting for doors of our hearts and our homes to open. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these, then they will be brave and free. Shout your name in victory. When we love the least of these, when we love the least of these. If not us, who will be like Jesus to the least of these? If not us, tell me who will be like Jesus to the least of these. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love. Little hands, shoeless feet, lonely eyes looking back at me. Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve? On their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons. looking back at me. Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve on their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun? These could be our daughters and our sons. And just like a drum, I can hear their hearts beating. I know my God won't let them be defeated. Every child has a dream to belong and be loved. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these, then they will be brave and free. Shout your name in victory. When we love the least of these, when we love the least of these. Break our hearts once again. Help us to remember when we were only children hoping for a friend. Won't you look around? These are the lives that the world has forgotten, waiting for doors of our hearts and our homes to open. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these, then they will be brave and free. Shout your name in victory.
Good morning. Welcome to the King's Report for Wednesday, May 24th, 2017, 8th year of Chungi, 4th month, and the 29th day by the heavenly calendar. We're in the next to the last day of the heavenly calendar, which means that day after tomorrow is the day of all true all things. I want to start today with the weather as usual, and right now it's 53 degrees at the Chinugung Palace. And we're going to have a partly cloudy day today with the sun and some clouds going up to 71 degrees. And tomorrow and the day after are going to be kind of rainy, especially tomorrow. And I know that the weather reports around the reporters around the country are saying that, this is going to disrupt outdoor activities and so forth. But really, living in the countryside, you get to appreciate rain because rain really, you can see how it helps things grow. Especially, in the Sanctuary Church pond, we have a lot of tadpoles, hundreds, perhaps thousands of tadpoles swimming around right now and eating and trying to grow and trying to turn into frogs. Last year, a lot of them didn't make it. The pond dried up before they could turn into frogs. So I'm kind of rooting for those tadpoles, and so I'm kind of glad to see the rain coming to help them, give them more time to turn into frogs and not be eaten by the birds. That's all good, but somehow you want to root for the tadpoles. I wanted to, as a part of the weather report, go to this story about this landslide in California. That was really something, wasn't it? It's a massive landslide reportedly caused $1 billion in highway damage in Big Sur, California over the weekend. Following one of the wettest winters in California in recent history, the landslide caused extensive damage to Highway 1 and put it under 40 feet and 1 million tons of rock and mud. About a quarter mile of the road at the area called Mud Creek is closed off. Authorities said the area is still unstable, and they have yet to be able to revisit the area and assess when it can happen. Months of rain this winter ended a 5-year drought. California areas impacted by the drought fell from 54 to 14% since May 2016, as many areas received several times their normal annual rainfall. But Big Sur is known as a known tourist spot in California, attracting visitors for its scenic beaches and redwoods. So I want to go show this video by the Monterey County Sheriff's Office of that landslide and the effect of it. And it looks to me like someone's house is there on the right as we're looking at it. I guess that would be south of the landslide. But yeah, that's really something. It looks to me like maybe are they going to have to tunnel through that or what? Maybe they're still trying to figure out what they're going to do with that. But that was a close call for whoever's living there on the right. If that is a house, I'm not sure what that is, but there's a road leading up to it, so it's some kind of a facility, whether it's a residence or some other facility, but whoever was there had a close call. Yeah, but that's the power of nature for you. That's the power of nature. Just in one swoop like that, it can just come down and destroy what human beings have created there and covered that road pretty well. Fortunately, no one was hurt. Yes, that was the good thing. All right, let's go to our Bible Rima for this morning, and I'm going to Romans chapter 10, verse 14. I can bring that up. How then shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? How then shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? The Bible is really an amazing book. It's full of contradictions. Sometimes, the scholars say that they don't know who actually wrote certain books of the Bible. There's controversy over maybe multiple authors wrote some book, or maybe some translator later on added some stuff But it's a truly an amazing book, because God is able to speak to us through this book, because it's been blessed by God, and that's the important thing. That in spite of all of its technical imperfections, God is able to speak through it to us, and He has done so through billions of people, through thousands of years. And this morning, in this verse, I'm especially focused on this first sentence: "How shall they call on Him in whom they have not believed?" A lot of people call on the name of God, call on the name of the Messiah, even call on our true Father, when in actuality they have not been believing in Him. And frankly, this is what I connect to the current situation of many of the leaders in the who still remain in the Family Federation, and many of the members also who still remain in the Family Federation. And when I see what they're doing, when I see what they're saying, it calls into question for me whether they ever actually believed in True Father, whether they actually believed in Christ, in His second coming. And how are they to call on Him? How are they to pray to Him? How are they to ask Him for help, or how are they to report to Him when they actually never believed in Him? They say that, Father made many mistakes, but this was the Word become flesh. The Word became flesh 2,000 years ago, and the Word became flesh a second time in the 20th century. Jesus said that He would return, and He did. And this was God among us, and we were with God. He was fully God, but also fully human, just as Jesus was, fully God and fully human, because He needed to come as a human being, so that He could go through the life course of a human being and be victorious in that course, to overcome Satan during that course, so that He could save us, and so that He could establish God's kingdom on this earth. The one point that Christianity really misses is that Jesus coming to the earth, God's coming to the earth 2,000 years ago, was not all about us. It was not all about saving humanity. That was only part of the story. Instead, the ultimate purpose for Jesus' coming was, as He prayed, so that Thy kingdom may come on earth as it is in heaven. Jesus came to establish God's kingdom. And because the situation then would not permit that, because He was killed in an untimely manner before He could accomplish that, because the conditions to build God's kingdom could not be fulfilled, because He was not able to have a spouse or a family, He had to come again. And this is what happened in the 20th century, when Father again came as the Word become flesh, fully God and fully human, going through the life course of a human being and establishing all the conditions necessary for God's kingdom to be established on this earth. And that was accomplished in the unity of Cain and Abel within Father's family, in the person of Kukjinim and Hyungjinim. And Father was able to bless that unity on June 5th, 2012 in Las Vegas. And then approximately 3 months, almost exactly 3 months later, He chose to go to the spirit world so that He could continue His work, And He was able to do that because now He has a direct Son who is also a disciple. And this is something that Jesus did not have, and that is why He had to that is why he had to come back as in a resurrected form and to be with his disciples for 40 days so that he could have at least a spiritual spiritual lineage that he could work through and provide a spiritual salvation to humanity. But Father has a physical son, physical direct heir and representative body in the person of Hyungjinim. And through him, he is able to conduct his providence and to build the kingdom. Through him and also with Kukjinim, who is united with Abel Hyungjinim as the true king. And so now God's kingdom is being built on this earth. Let's believe, as Mrs. Kang often states, what we can accomplish to the extent that we believe. We can accomplish to the extent that we believe. This is what she says Father told her during her time with him. And so let's do that this day, on this 24th day of May, and the 29th day in the fourth month in the heavenly calendar. Let's take a break now, and we'll be back in just a minute. We'll start going through the news from a Cheongguk perspective.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
And welcome back to the King's Report for May 24th, 2017. I didn't tell you my name last time. My name is Tim Elder, and I'm sitting in for Second King of Cheongguk, Hyungjin Moon, on this King's Report this morning. And this is the May 24th and the eighth year of Cheongi, fourth month, 29th day by the heavenly calendar. And let's start going through the news headlines. Here on drudgereport.com, we have more leaks. Transcript of Trump private call with Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has been leaked. And in quotes, you are doing an amazing job, nuke talk. But of course, the biggest story this Wednesday morning is the continuing aftershocks from the terror incident that occurred in Manchester, UK, night before last. UK threat level critical, and Drudge has the front pages of 9 UK publications. Daily Mirror says killed by evil. Metro says now they kill our little girls. Daily Star says slaughter of the innocents. Daily Express says evil beyond belief. The Sun, pure evil. The Times, Libya terror link. And what is this? The girls who will never come home. Daily Mail says soldiers on the streets. And the Guardian says young lives stolen by terror. So this is there at the top of all the newspapers in the UK. UK threat level critical. Army on streets. Fear grips pop youth. And here then classified documents show Obama illegally spied on Americans for years. And we'll be going through that. This is actually quite a bombshell, I think. This is not some speculation or some article with unnamed sources. This is real. They have. We'll be going through that later on. They have definite sources and authoritative sources. Kim.com. It was Seth. Hannity backs off as Fox retreats. Family demands police reveal detail of investigation. Stop politicizing our son's murder. This is about the question of who was leaking emails or other materials from the DNC to the WikiLeaks. And of course, DNC, the Democrats have always said that it was the Russians. But more and more evidence is coming that it was actually this young man in the Democratic National Committee who was then later murdered by someone after having apparently provided materials to WikiLeaks. Pissed, Russians want BuzzFeed staff to testify in Trump dossier case. I think the Russians are getting tired of being the whipping boy of the Democrats. We are not under every bed, as you suspect. Moderate Republicans clash with each other over Obamacare repeal. Congress will fight to keep food stamp spending high. Google AI beats Chinese master in ancient game of Go. Cops clown flees on scooter after slashing man to death with bladed gloves. Wow. Pug saves family from trio of armed home invaders. Japanese Yakuza mobster life so hard, some shoplifting food to stay in business. Going out and get a job, I guess, does not compute. Morrissey attacks politicians. Queen over terror response. Unwillingness to specify Islamist extremist. Sheriff, concert slaughter, wake-up call for America. Jitters, false alarm halts Atlanta Braves baseball game. Teacher fight caught on tape by student. That must have been interesting. Social media, gang war, fuels spike in drive-by shootings. Memorial Day weekend box office horror. Depp should walk the plank. Kubrick, little-known right-hand man, takes bow in Cannes. Qatar news agency claims hacked after Emir says ties with Israel good. Total consumer debt total consumer debt per capita in Maryland and Hawaii, $67,000. Fake Navy SEAL gets 4 years in prison. Update man acquitted in murder case after oral sex defense. That's a story that we've been avoiding. And if you want to check it out, you can do it yourself. Study mushrooms safest recreational drug. HBO shelves Jon Stewart animation project. Top cock Colbert wins season. FCC stands down. Rules would allow feds to track and destroy domestic drones. Chickens, pigeons, goats, and turtle found beheaded in ritual killing. Satanism. Massive landslide buries iconic highway in Big Sur. We did that already. Record $1 billion highway damage. Goat yoga fad sweeps nation. Goat yoga fad.
Did you do your goat yoga this morning?
If I knew what it is, I might be able to answer that question. Thanks a billion. Drudge tops Google, CNN, NYT, Wash Post, and News Race. Ranked number 3 in all views. Yeah, yeah.
You're one of them.
Yes. Newark Airport closes after fire on United plane. Moody's downgrades China. Uh-oh. Watch out below. Senator Rand Paul plans to force vote on $110 billion Saudi defense deal. And Bezos, city on moon. SpaceX tech says fired for saying results falsified, protocols ignored. Samsung eye security fooled by photo. Sometimes the low-tech defeats the high-tech. Drone mystery over nuke site. Animals still in cages. Year after zoo closure. Sheriff Joe, no regrets. Truck plows into Analtech, causing hazmat situation. In the Breitbart news, DOJ ramps up funding for eminent domain land acquisition, potentially clears way for border wall. Not sure we like the idea of eminent domain land acquisition. I hope that they would be able to. I hope they compensate people justly if they're going to take their land. Podesta, I see no sign Trump will be impeached. John Podesta, that's Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman last year, and President Bill Clinton's chief of staff, I believe. So he says, no, I don't see any sign Trump's going to be impeached. What's all this fuss about? 6 major points in Trump's keynote address on Israel. We can get to that later. Exclusive, Iran, Paul explains move to force vote opposing Saudi weapons deal, de Blasio and Trump budget. Children will die. What does this say about letting Islamic extremists into the country? Will children die from that? Let's ask people in Manchester. Hannity, I'm no longer discussing the Seth Rich matter at this time. Suicide bomber, son of Libyan immigrants who chanted Arabic prayers in the street. That was the guy who did the bombing in Manchester.
Not Muslim prayers, but Arabic prayers.
Arabic prayers in the street. Presumably Presbyterian prayers, yes. Morrissey rips politicians petrified to admit Islamic extremism behind terror. Ivanka Trump to meet victims of human trafficking while in Rome. Watch God Save the Queen played at New York Yankees game. I'll have to see that because, God Save the Queen is the same as My Country 'Tis of Thee, Sweet Land of Liberty of Thee I Sing. I sang that for a Brit once, and he was amazed. He says, what? You stole our song?
Claimed it.
They didn't trademark it, I guess. They didn't copyright it. Yeah, we took it. Social media happy. Shot elephant crushed a hunter to death. Maybe that was karma, I don't know. Venezuela protesters burned down Hugo Chavez's childhood home. Turkish media, U.S. sends 100 trucks of military equipment to Syrian Kurds, according to the Turkish media. UK terror threat raised to highest critical rating. Army could be deployed to streets. And actually also in front of the Buckingham Palace one time, they were playing God Save the Queen, and an American tourist was overheard saying, oh, look, they're playing an American patriotic song. I don't know if that's an urban... it probably does happen, yeah. Katy Perry, no barriers, no borders. We all just need to coexist. Let's get into that too, because this is indicative of that generation. Yeah, we'll get into that too. Democratic senator, Trump's rhetoric could lead to U.S. attack like Manchester. Katy Perry must have voted for this Democratic senator. Trump's 2018 budget plan calls for 60 miles of new border wall. And then we get into the stories about Manchester, 22 plus dead, 120 wounded, at least 12 children injured. Youngest victim, age 8. And a brother of Seth Rich asks Hannity not to spread conspiracy theories. Economist losing minds at Trump's plan to get 3% economic growth again. We'll get into that too, because it turns out that President Saint Barack Obama, in his first budget, predicted 3.2% in his second year in office. And that didn't happen ever during his 8 years in office. He never got to 3%. Now Trump is predicting 3%, and economists are angry and flabbergasted that he would dare say that he can accomplish something that Obama did not. So anyway, we'll get into that later on. Challenges facing Trump on his return and how he can beat them. Islamic State supporters vow to shake the West. Humayra, as Venezuela inches towards Syria-style war, U.S. weapons are not the answer. Yeah, we need to pay attention to what's going on in Venezuela. It's not all about the failure of socialism. It's about the emergence of a failed state. Ariana Grande, fans tremble as they recall Manchester attack. Ariana's mother escorted fans to safety. Yeah, it looks like she did good there. Britain raises terror threat level after concert carnage. This is only the beginning. ISIS supporters celebrate Manchester attack on social media. Fitton Obama final travel tally nearly $100 million. Expert mandatory E-Verify is coming. New Jersey restaurant employee fired for riding cops' pigs on officer's receipt. Good for the restaurant for firing him, I think. Video, Italy Orthodox Jewish man viciously beaten on way to synagogue. We need to, especially those of us who are elderly, need to be able to defend ourselves. University of Oregon spends $23,400 to rename buildings and concerns of racism. And Pope Francis moves general audience to make more room for a Trump visit. And actually, that visit has already happened this morning. They met for a half an hour. John Podesta, alt-right media like Sean Hannity, colluding with Russia. And former CIA had testimony. Still no evidence of Trump-Russia collusion.
Dang.
Charles Krauthammer has an interesting comment on that. No one can find the crime. They're looking under every rock, every nook and cranny. Trump budget a new foundation for American greatness. We'll have to get into that too because we haven't covered that budget yet. I wanted to get into this thing about Obama team secretly conducting illegal searches on Americans for years. They talk about Watergate. They talk about Trump and Watergate. This is Watergate on steroids, all right? Let's go through this. This is Obama. The National Security Agency under former President Barack Obama routinely violated American privacy protections while scouring through overseas intercepts and failed to disclose the extent of the problems until the final days before Donald Trump was elected president last fall, according to once top-secret documents that chronicle some of the most serious constitutional abuses to date by the U.S. intelligence community. More than 5%, or 1 out of every 20 searches seeking upstream internal internet data on Americans inside the NSA's so-called Section 702 database, violated the safeguards Obama and his intelligence chiefs vowed to follow in 2011, according to one classified internal report reviewed by Circa. Circa is the publication that is publishing this. The Obama administration self-disclosed the problems. So the Obama administration self-disclosed the problems at a closed-door hearing October 26th. That was 26th is what, about 2 weeks before the election, before the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, which is a secret court, that set off alarm. Trump was elected less than 2 weeks later. The normally supportive court, normally the court just says, okay, yeah, do whatever you want, censured administration officials, saying the failure to disclose the extent of the violations earlier amounted to an institutional lack of candor, and that the improper searches constituted a very, quote, very serious Fourth Amendment issue, according to a recently unsealed court document dated April 26, 2017. So that's about a month ago. The admitted violations undercut one of the primary defenses that the intelligence community and Obama officials have used in recent weeks to justify their snooping into incidental NSA intercepts about Americans. Circa has reported that there was a threefold increase in NSA data searches about Americans and a rise in the unmasking of U.S. persons' identities in intelligence reports after Obama loosened the privacy rules in 2011. Officials like former National Security Advisor Susan Rice have argued their activities were legal under the so-called minimization rule changes Obama made, and that the intelligence agencies were strictly monitored to avoid abuses. Hey, they're all the employees there are saints, all right? They're not going to do anything bad. We can trust them, right? The intelligence court and the NSA's own internal watchdog found that not to be true. Quote, since 2011, NSA's minimization procedures have prohibited use of U.S. person identifiers to query the results of upstream internet collections under Section 702, the unsealed court ruling declared. The October 26, 2016 notice informed the court, this is the October 26, 2016, that's the one that happened just before President Trump was elected, informed the court that the NSA analysts had been conducting such queries in violation of that prohibition with much greater frequency than had been previously disclosed to the court. The American Civil Liberties Union said that the newly disclosed violations are some of the most serious to ever be documented and strongly call into question the U.S. intelligence community's ability to police itself and safeguard Americans' privacy as guaranteed by the Constitution's Fourth Amendment protections against unlawful search and seizure. Quote, I think what this emphasizes is the shocking lack of oversight of these programs, said Nima Singh Giuliani, the ACLU's legislative counsel in Washington. You have these problems going on for years that only come to the attention of the court late in the game, and then it takes additional years to change its practices. Quote, I think it does call into question all those defenses that we kept hearing, that we always have a robust oversight structure. We have a culture of adherence to privacy standards, she added. And the headline now is they actually haven't been in compliance for years. And the FISA court itself says, in its opinion, that the NSA suffers from a culture of a lack of candor. The NSA acknowledged itself disclosed the mass violations to the court last fall, and that in April it took the extraordinary step of suspending the type of searches that were violating the rules, even deleting prior collected data on Americans to avoid any further violations. Quote, NSA will no longer collect certain internet communications that merely mention a foreign intelligence target, unquote, the agency said in the statement that was dated April 28th and placed on its website without capturing much media or congressional attention. The media doesn't care. Why? Because they were busy frothing at the mouth, calling for the impeachment of President Trump. Why wasn't Obama impeached? In question is the collection of what is known as upstream about data about an American that is collected even though they were not directly in contact with a foreigner that the NSA was legally allowed to intercept. The NSA said it doesn't have the ability to stop collecting about information on Americans without losing some other important data. It, however, said it would stop the practice to reduce the chance that it would acquire communication of U.S. persons or others who are not in direct contact with a foreign intelligence target. The NSA said it also plans to delete the vast majority of its upstream internet data to further protect the privacy of U.S. person communications. Agency officials called the violations inadvertent compliance lapses. But the court and IG documents suggest the NSA had not developed a technological way to comply with the rules they had submitted to the court in 2011. In other words, they never intended to comply with those rules. You know, if they intended to comply with them, they would have developed a technological way that would allow them to comply. But they never bothered to develop that kind of a technological way, a technological method. Officials explain that NSA query compliance is largely maintained through a series of manual checks and had not included the proper limiters to prevent unlawful searches, the NSA internal watchdog reported in a top-secret report in January that was just declassified. A new system is being developed now, officials said. Now a new system is being developed. After they get caught with their hand in the cookie jar, now they're going to find a way to keep the lid closed so that they cannot put their hand into the cookie jar. The NSA conducts thousands of searches a year on data involving Americans. Whoa! The NSA conducts thousands of searches a year on data involving Americans. That's you and me, folks. And the actual number of violations were redacted from the documents Circa reviewed.
Millions.
They don't want us to know how many cookies they stole from that cookie jar. But a chart in the report showed three types of violations, the most frequent being 5.2% of the time when NSA Section 702 upstream data on U.S. persons was searched. The Inspector General also found noncompliance between 0.7% and 1.4% of the time involving NSA activities in which there was a court order to target an American for spying, but the rules were not followed. These activities are known as Section 704 and Section 705 spying. Yeah, see here, this is the, here there's a photograph of the redacted document here. There were a total of non-compliant queries. We reviewed the black space queries for the records for the targets that had branch of the TOPIS selected for review. The IG report spared few words for the NSA's efforts before the disclosure to ensure it was complying with the practices. Some that date to rules issued in 2008. That's what, almost 10 years. In the final days of the Bush administration, and others that Obama put into effect in 2011. We found that the agency controls for monitoring query compliance have not been completely developed, the Inspector General reported, citing problems ranging from missing requirements for documentation to the failure to complete controls that would ensure query compliance. The NSA's Signal Intelligence Directorate, the nation's main foreign surveillance arm, wrote a letter back to the IG saying it agreed with the findings. Yeah, our hand was in the cookie jar, and that corrective action plans are in the works.
I feel better now.
You feel better, don't you?
It's all going to be fine.
It's all going to be fine, folks. It's all going to be fine. We can trust the NSA. Corrective action plans are in the works. They have plans. They have plans. Yes. Oh, my goodness.
Come to mind. The interesting timing of the release of this information when Trump is dominating all the newspapers across the country, through the election process. This is a very safe time to release this kind of information because it's going to be buried somewhere in the back of the paper. And I don't think that's done by accident. I think they're very calculative on when they release this kind of damaging data. And they know that the American people, the second point that comes to mind, the American people really have given up their sense of outrage over privacy. It's common now. If you ask any millennial, any person who is on the internet, they have this compliance attitude that it's okay if they know what I'm doing, if they know my internet searches, they know my phone conversations. And it's really because the result of the biggest false flag, the 9/11 situation brought about this situation now that everybody's okay with the government eavesdropping. We've given up our Fourth Amendment for the sake of so-called security. And again, we think that the government can do no evil. And the government has our best interest in mind, and they're stopping terrorism, and we're willing to give up our privacy for the sake of so-called protection against terrorism.
Yeah, that's really the most tragic thing that has happened in the last 15, 16 years since 9/11, that we've really allowed the government to have all this power, and to really something like this comes out. And certainly, if this had come out during the Nixon administration, Nixon would have been impeached without question.
Yeah.
Now things are happening that go far beyond Watergate. And yet people don't care. This one publication, Circa, actually went through the document that was released in late April, and wrote this story as a result of their analysis of that article. And there's not a single unattributed source here. It's all public documents, declassified documents that they're quoting from. Declassified documents, meaning that any journalist could have written this story if they had taken the time and if they had the interest. But instead, they're trying to dig up non-existent crimes by Trump and doing their best to impeach Trump. And so they're allowing this kind of a story to just pass through their fingers and never even pay attention to it. This publication, Circa, that I never heard of, is publishing this, and it's an amazing story. It should be top of page one of the New York Times, top of page one on the Washington Post and Washington Times. But everybody's busy trying to get Trump, so it's not there.
It's the double standard. We see it time and time again that if Trump was the one that was behind this, was the president during this breaking story, it would be headline news everywhere around the world. But since it's under Obama's watch, it's a non-story.
In the Chattanooga Constitution, it would be against the constitutional to have an agency such as the National Security Agency, because you cannot have a national investigative agency that is investigating citizens of Cheongguk in this way. There's really this kind of a disclosure, and I hope that this story grows somehow, and that people will be outraged by this. And I hope that we can go to social media and share this story and then spread it, so that we can build a outrage. This is what people should be outraged about, not some fake collusion story, not some thing. But this is actually a thing that affects our lives. The Constitution says that God has given us a certain inalienable rights, but we need to protect those rights. We have them. The government cannot take them away from us, but they can certainly block them. And the NSA acting in this way is certainly a part of that. We're going to take a short break now and come back with more stories from a Cheongguk perspective.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Wednesday, May 24th. We're in the 8th year of Cheongguk, and this is the 4th month and 29th day by the heavenly calendar. This morning I wanted to cover and report a story that happened just, I think, a couple hours ago. That is, that President Trump met with Pope Francis at the Vatican. Pope Francis and President Trump, two of the most recognizable people in the world, met for 30 minutes in the Vatican Wednesday, where the two likely discussed topics from immigration to Monday's terror attack in the UK. Trump was joined by his wife, his daughter Ivanka, her husband Jared Kushner, and U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. Trump and the Pope shook hands, and Trump said, "Thank you so much." Once the two shook hands, they were led into the Pope's private study and were seated across from one another. Pope told the Pope it was a very great honor. The media was led out of the room, and the two talked for about 30 minutes. They left the meeting and shook hands. Pope Francis went on to attend his Wednesday address in the Vatican, and Trump took a tour of the Sistine Chapel. Despite the differences, the two men likely attempted to find common ground on denouncing religiously inspired violence and demanding Muslim leaders to take a greater stand in rooting out fanaticism from their places of worship. Both Trump and Francis expressed dismay at Monday night's deadly blast at a concert in Manchester, England, with the president adding a shot at the suicide bombers who detonated it. The Pope expressed a heartfelt solidarity with all those afflicted by the senseless act of violence, especially the children and young people who died. He made no mention of anyone responsible. The Pope and Trump have had differences, etc., etc. So anyway, this is a story written by a journalist who wasn't in the meeting, and so he's trying to speculate what might have happened, and then he goes back to what happened before, leading to all the statements by Trump and the Pope Francis prior to the meeting. And Trump's visit to the Vatican is the third leg of his tour of the world's three main monotheistic religions, coming after he visited the cradles of Islam and Judaism. And so President Trump visited Saudi Arabia first, then he went to Israel. And while in Israel, he also met with the president of the Palestinian Authority. And today he met with the president of the Pope in Rome. And I imagine he's on his way back now. All right, so that is the president in what he's doing. And going back now to the story, let's do this Krauthammer story. The Krauthammer on Trump-Russia probe, no one can locate the crime. Charles Krauthammer said the investigation into the alleged collusion between President Trump and Russia appears to be a cover-up lacking a crime. Krauthammer said nobody can locate the crime, but Trump acts as if there is one. The president insists there's no there, but acts as if there is, he said. Krauthammer said that over the past year, no officials accused Trump of committing a crime. He added that special counsel Robert Mueller was given godlike powers in the probe. Mueller cannot be fired and can take as long as he wants to form a conclusion. And watch the clip above. We don't want to watch that because then they'll block our broadcast, and so we'll not do that. But Krauthammer says it's a cover-up without a crime.
There's not even a gun from smoke to come forth.
But he does point out that the president keeps acting as if there is one.
What does that mean?
You have to watch the clip to find that out. I'm not going to play it for you. From Libya to UK, Manchester bomber had come back from North Africa. So yesterday we were speculating, because yesterday morning at this time they said that they knew who it was, but they weren't going to tell us.
Is Libya on the forbidden list?
I
think it is.
I have to check.
I think it is.
I have to check. We'll check that in a minute. During the next break, I'll check that.
7 countries.
The man British police say blew himself up at a packed concert was letting out in Manchester, England, Monday night is believed to have traveled to Syria and had proven links with ISIS. France's Interior Minister Gerard Collomb said Wednesday that British and French intelligence have information that Salman Abedi, 22, had been to Syria, although it is unclear if he was part of a larger network of attackers. Collomb spoke with British Prime Minister Theresa May and said the two countries should continue cooperating closely on counterterrorism efforts despite Britain's pending exit from the European Union. It was also reported the attacker had recently returned to the UK from Libya days before the attack, according to his friends. Abedi, who was born in Britain to Libyan parents, had traveled to the war-torn North African nation 3 weeks ago and came back, like days ago, a friend told the Times of London. Now investigators are attempting to learn whether the university dropout attended a terrorism training camp in Libya. That was another university he went to in Libya, where ISIS and al-Qaeda fighters are engaged in a bloody war against government forces. Meanwhile, the Sun newspaper reported that authorities were also looking at the possibility that Abedi had traveled to Syria from Libya without drawing the notice of British authorities. His potential ties to Syria now very much forms one line of inquiry, one source told The Sun late Tuesday. However, security sources told the Times that their top priority is determining who constructed the bomb that caused such carnage at the Manchester Arena Monday night. Detectives who have viewed closed-circuit TV footage tell the paper that Abedi placed an explosive-laden suitcase on the ground in the foyer of Manchester Arena at around 10:30 p.m. as a concert by pop star Ariana Grande was ending. Moments later, the bomb exploded, killing at least 22 people and injuring nearly 120 others.
So he was allowed in with a suitcase?
The thing is that it was in the foyer. So apparently,
I see, as people were leaving.
As they were leaving. And this, by the way, I was looking at another article this morning, is the excuse of the company that was in charge of the security for that event, saying, hey, it occurred in a public area. What were we supposed to do? It was outside of their security cordon. So that company is now saying, we're not responsible. Moments later, the bomb exploded, and as Great Britain's terror threat was raised to its highest level for the first time in a decade, counterterrorism officials feared that a person who constructed the sophisticated explosive device could be on the loose. Earlier Tuesday, at least 20 heavily armed, helmeted police surrounded a house listed as Abedi's address in the Fallowfield area of South Manchester and blasted down the door. The British electoral roll lists Salman Abedi and Ismail Abedi as current residents of the house. Others with the same name are recorded as living there in previous years. Ismail Abedi, 23, was arrested on a nearby street and remained in custody Tuesday evening. Neighbors remembered the suspected suicide bomber as a tall, thin young man who often wore traditional Islamic dress. Alan Kinsey, 52, who lives across the street, told the Associated Press he had seen a lot of different people living there in the past, but in the last 6 months or so or more had only seen one young man in his 20s. Kinsey said he would often get picked up by another young man in a Toyota and often returned late. I thought he worked in a takeaway or something because of his late hours, Kinsey said. Our other neighbors said Abedi had grown a beard in the past year, would chant Islamic prayers loudly in the street. So they were not Presbyterian. Islamic prayers loudly in the street and flew the green flag of Libyan Islamists from the roof of his house. A male relative of Abedi's told the Sun that he had seen him approximately 10 days before the attack looking happy, relaxed, and smiling. The family member added that Abedi's parents had recently returned to Libya, having initially fled to Britain to escape the rule of a late dictator Muammar Gaddafi. He added that the suspected terrorist had been a keen soccer fan supporting European clubs. We can't believe it. Yeah, no, we can't. It said, right. So it was a person who had links to Libya and Syria, and the bomb was sophisticated. And seems likely that from this, that the bomb was built by someone other than the person who set it off. If that's the case, then that guy could build other bombs to be set off in other venues. So the police are focusing their investigation and trying to find the person who built the bomb. That seems logical, but. This does emphasize, it does certainly focus on the need for America to be vigilant in who we let into the country. This person was born in Britain, but he traveled to Libya and then apparently also to Syria, and came back and just a couple 3 weeks later, performed this terrible, heinous act of terrorism, and especially killed these young children. And there was really no way for people to defend themselves against this, because the government was not doing its job to protect the country by keeping this kind of a person off the street, or at least and even before that, out of the country. Maybe if he was going back and forth between Libya, there should have been a closer watch on him, and I'm sure there would be a lot of second guessing on that. Do you have anything to say on that?
The part that bothers me, and it's a story that isn't talked about enough, is Saudi Arabia's relationship with Wahhabism and the funding of terror camps in these dangerous countries like Libya, Syria, North Africa, different places, and yet we're making deals with Saudi Arabia like this $1 billion defense deal.
$110 billion.
$110 billion of defense spending, and I'm not sure if we give them aid. Financial aid.
I think we're collecting $110 billion from them, actually.
From this particular deal.
From this, yeah. I think they're going to buy stuff from us.
Yeah, I wonder if this is being covered enough, where Saudi Arabia's direct support of terrorism around the world, yet we are clearly have a very cozy relationship with Saudi Arabia.
Because we're also concerned about Iran. and Saudi Arabia helps us fight Iran. I think
Right.
that's the calculation there. So there is.
But we also gave how much millions to Iran during the Obama administration. We gave them a huge amount of money for
Right.
this so-called nuclear deal.
Yeah,
We lifted sanctions and all sorts of things, but we also gave them a lot of money in response to this deal. So we're playing both sides.
yeah,
A libertarian perspective, we should,
yeah. So
should
that's
we
why
even be doing this kind
that's
of?
why Paul Rand is going to
Yeah.
ask for a vote on that.
Yeah, and I agree with that.
There's an article of how Manchester terror attack ignites security fears among summer event seasons, and there's a person here, a security expert, saying that make us change our behavior. Instead, he says at the very end, instead of canceling summer plans, Balboni said to simply be vigilant, pay attention to law enforcement, and urge and demand your government to do everything it can to keep you safe.
Don't let those tourism dollars go down. What the king said, that 80% of tourism is down.
To Paris, yeah.
Yeah, to Paris.
It's gone down. But of course, if you're going to, okay, so if this means demand that your government place travel bans on people from 7 Muslim majority countries that have rampant terrorism from, or having, extreme vetting of people coming in from those countries, if this is what this person means, then okay, I can agree. But what he's actually saying is, don't change your behavior. Keep on going to these large events. But I think the point has to be made that we're in a war. And in a war, when the enemy attacks and is successful in staging an attack, then you have to adjust. You adjust and see how you can, what you can do to not be hit by that. Yeah, I think we do have to change our behavior. We do have to say, okay, I'm not going to go to these kinds of large events. And I'm sorry for football and baseball fans, but yeah, I would say don't go to baseball games or football games. Watch them on television. That's what we have to do during this time of judgment when we are being subject to this kind of attack. President Trump says, let's eradicate this ideology of jihadism. Yes, but during that process, while we're in the process of doing that, we have to protect ourselves by changing our behavior, adjusting our behavior.
Especially if the government is not going to limit, if they're not going to call out Islamic terrorism for what it is.
Right.
They're still trying to protect this class of terrorism from the public, and so if they continue to do that, I would agree. You have to protect yourself in that case.
I'm going to do everything I can to be in places where I can defend myself. That's what I'm going to do. That means I'm not going to go to these kinds of large events and go to these crowded venues, because there, as you're going in, they make you go through a metal detector. They don't let you carry in tools that you can use to defend yourself, and they don't take responsibility for people who are coming in. The security firm in this case here says that it happened outside the perimeter, outside the security perimeter, because it was in the foyer. It was not in the actual event itself. And so the security firm is saying that we are not responsible for this kind of a thing. And they say that, and other security experts say that, maybe we have to expand the perimeter, require more people, more cost, and so they're not sure that they can do that. And this security expert says this is about not stopping security until the event is over and people are on their way home. Balboni said something that he admits will mean more resources for both security and law enforcement. When it comes to the perimeter, Balboni argues that the further out you have the security cordon, the more dispersed people are, the less body count you will have In other words, fewer people are killed. And also you have more time to spot a potential attacker. According to Balboni, the question then becomes for law enforcement at any of these venues, how far out do you check people? It's reasonable. Former Boston Police Commissioner Ed Davis told Fox Business Network's Maria Bartiromo that we clearly will have to increase security at concerts now, though he adds that extending the perimeter often creates a new set of problems. No matter where you put the security perimeter, Davis said, there's going to be a line that forms, and when that line forms, it's subject to attack. Balboni said there's no way to eliminate the risk, but it can be managed. Still, he admits, there's nothing you can do to stop a lone wolf suicide bomber from walking into a crowd of people. Get that? There's nothing you can do to stop a lone wolf suicide bomber from walking into a crowd of people. So, how do we protect ourselves? Don't be in crowds of people. Don't be in crowds.
Grand Central Station.
I learned from actual training with the New York State Police and NYPD as they conducted drills using handguns how fast you have to react, how it happens in a split second, and you can't be wrong. You can't shoot an innocent person just because you think they're acting suspiciously, and the bad guy never from a single perfect shot to the head. It doesn't happen like in the movies. So, but he says, don't change your summer plans. That is a final conclusion. But yeah, we have to change our summer plans because what we don't want is for the government to use these events to get more power. Organizations like the NSA say, hey, look, see, we need to violate your privacy in order to protect you.
And most people are willing to give that up
Yeah.
for the sake of protection.
But be in places where you can protect yourself. That's one of the principles of self-defense.
Yeah.
Be in places where you are allowed to carry tools that you can use to protect yourself, and where there is a less likelihood of a suicide bomber. Because suicide bombers want to kill as many people as possible. They're not almost always in these recent instances. They're not targeting a specific person. They're targeting. They want to drive up the numbers.
And they're conducting seminars on exactly how to do that through trucks and through...
Because the numbers determine the number of virgins they get in heaven, I think, right? And they're teaching this kind of stuff in Libya, apparently. So don't be in crowds. This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm telling my children, my family. Don't be in crowds, all right? So, okay, we can go to football games after the judgment period is over, but during this judgment period, let's act reasonably and logically, and be in places where we can preserve our life and not be victims of this kind of a thing. Very sad, very sorry for these, especially for the 22-plus people who were killed in the Manchester event, especially that 8-year-old girl. It's really tragic to have someone like that killed in this kind of a situation. Let's prevent it from happening again by taking reasonable steps on our own and not trusting the government to protect us, but take responsibility for our own defense. We'll have a short break and come back with more news from a Chunaguk perspective. Welcome back to the King's Report for Wednesday morning on May 24th, 2017. And I'm Tim Elder, and I'm sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyungjin Moon, and I'm here with Greg Knoll this morning. And we're going through the news, and we're about to turn to this statement by Katy Perry, who is a hugely influential person among a certain generation people. And just in case there's anyone out there who doesn't know who Katy Perry is,
Guilty as
somehow
charged.
mixes them up with Katie Couric, who is another person, entirely different generation, all thing. I'm just going to go through the Wikipedia article on Katy Perry, that she's an American singer and songwriter, and she started out in gospel music, flopped, was unsuccessful, and then she went to secular music and rose to fame in 2008 with the release of the singles I Kissed a Girl, which sparked controversy, and Hot and Cold from her second album, a pop rock record titled One of the Boys. Her third album, Teenage Dream, ventured to disco and contained the U.S. Billboard Hot 100 chart-topping singles California Girls, spelled with a U, Teenage Dream, Firework, E.T., and Last Friday Night, as well as the number 3 single, The One That Got Away, et cetera, et cetera. So she's a pop artist, all right? So she sings, and a lot of
Not so many gospel
kids-
themes in those recent songs, probably.
no. Apparently gospel didn't work out for her. And so now, based on her success in the pop music, she's speaking out on the Manchester terrorism incident. Pop megastar made an impassioned plea for people to coexist and said that barriers or borders could detract from that goal in an interview following the terrorist bombing in an Ariana Grande concert in Manchester, UK on Monday night. In an interview Tuesday on Elvis Duran and the Morning Show, the rhythm singer suggested that people unite following the tragedy which occurred as young fans. Whatever we say behind people's backs, the internet can be a little bit ruthless as far as fan bases go, but I think that the greatest thing we can do is just unite and love on each other, Perry said, adding no barriers, no borders. We all just need to coexist. Perry, for her part, said Tuesday that we're just all loving on each other, and we should just stay on loving each other. Stay loving on each other. If this gets out to anyone, I just want to say that I love all of you out there. And I just know that some of our fan bases kind of go both ways. Ari's fans are my fans, and my fans are Ari's fans, Perry added. Tell everyone, I love you today. Perry's preference for no borders or barriers may come from her staunch opposition to President Donald Trump, who promised the 2016 campaign to build a security wall on the U.S.-Mexico border. The singer was a vocal supporter of former Democratic presidential contender Hillary Clinton and previously marched in the anti-Trump Women's March on Washington shortly after Trump's inauguration. The 32-year-old star has subsequently entered a new era of purposeful music and established herself as a vocal member of the anti-Trump resistance movement. So what do you think of this? All we have to do is unite. All we have to do is love each other.
I used to be part of that school.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Confession.
A convert here.
Yeah, I was the New Ageism where basically evil only exists in your mind. Okay, so if you focus on evil, badness, then bad things will happen to you. So the purpose is to really just focus on the good, focus on love, focus on harmony, and if you dwell on that, then all goodness can emerge and goodness will dominate in the world. So
how did that work out for you?
Well, I began to realize that actually evil does exist, as Father said many times in Divine Principle. Satan is a being. There is orchestrated evil in the world. And it was kind of a slow process for me to actually accept that idea again after I had drifted away from that. And I wanted to live kind of like in La La Land, where if you just think about good, then only good exists. That's fairly popular today, that evil exists only in your mind. So I think it's important to realize that there are evil people in the world. There are evil ideologies such as communism, such as Wahhabism. There are people that are out to destroy other people, and I think if Katie really, believed in coexisting, then she should invite Charles Manson into her house and coexist with
What
him.
about me? Can I go into her house and open up her refrigerator and take anything I
I
want?
think she would have a barrier there, Tim. I think
might
she would have a
some
boundary.
She might have some security.
Some
people there,
security
right?
people that
Yeah.
might have a problem with
So
that.
yeah,
And
much
just-
less not Charles Manson, but what about Tim Elder? Can I go in there? And can I go into your bedroom, Katy Perry?
And does she have a problem with Obama building a wall in his Washington D.C.
Yeah,
Compound.
Yeah, apparently I would assume not. Yeah,
Yeah, and I'm
or
sure
the
that.
wall around the Vatican. She would.
Yeah.
I'm sure she's asking the Pope to tear that. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was probably paid for by the American taxpayers,
Obama's wall?
the Obama
Yes, yes,
wall,
yes, yes, yes.
because it's part of his security.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So somebody should investigate that and see if Obama is really coexisting with his neighbors in Washington, D.C.
I wonder if she has any walls.
Good question.
Yeah, most houses have walls, and the purpose of the wall is to
Protection.
Keep, protection, yes, not just the elements, but also protection against people who want to come in and raid your refrigerator or whatever else is in the house. So how do we? But as you said, this is common, and I think as I think of my own children and other kids their age and younger, how do we teach them? How do we educate them that there is evil in the world? That Islam, that at its fundamental root, not all people who believe in Islam, but at its root is a religion that seeks to destroy.
It's a religion that historically, and it's in the book, in the Quran, that forcing people to conversion is an acceptable form of conversion.
Yes.
And that has a history of the sword. And today's terrorism is just an amplified version of the sword dominating people and converting. In other words, if you do not convert, then your life will be taken.
But then the child will say, "Oh, but Daddy, you're just saying that because you're Islamophobic."
Right, yeah. This is...
How do you get around that? The children who died tragically, the children who survived, I'm sure, I hope that they learned a lesson that maybe that is how the deaths of those 22 plus people will not be in vain. That the lesson, if there's a lesson to be learned from this by people of that generation, from the kids who are the Ariana Grande's fans and Katy Perry's fans, is that there is evil. There are people who are working all night to build bombs that they can then use to destroy as few as possible. I hope that is a lesson that people are learning from this, and I hope that Katy Perry's fans will, if they like their music, that's their choice, but not listen to her advice on how to deal with terrorism.
Yeah, I think the king made a good point yesterday that by loving, evil will not change by coexisting with them.
Right.
Evil seeks to dominate. And this was another point that's hard for people in the New Age spiritualism movement to accept. This very naive thinking that if you love evil enough, love meaning being nice to it,
Right.
it will automatically evolve and change out of its evil nature into a good nature. And unfortunately, that is not the case. That's not the nature of Satan.
Loving evil means to separate yourself from it and to
Dominate
attack it.
Yeah.
Attack it and dominate it, and to make it stop being evil. This has been, the Archangel Lucifer's complaint throughout the ages. Oh, you're supposed to love me.
Right.
This has been Archangel Lucifer's complaint to God. Oh, remember, God, you created me, and you're supposed to love all your creation. You're supposed to love me. You can't destroy me. That would be against your principle. This is what Lucifer has been trying to say to God, and has been trying to fool people into saying, "Oh no, if I'm your enemy, you have to love me." Okay, we'll love you. We'll separate from you, and we will attack you, and we will make you stop doing evil. That is the way that we will love you.
It's like a bully in school.
Yeah.
A bully is a classic example of an archangel type.
Yeah.
He will seek to dominate, become stronger, and if you allow him, he'll become stronger. It's only when you stand up to him,
Stand
being
up to him.
trained,
Yes.
defense,
Yes.
and loving others through your strength and self-defense, that the bully
Yes.
will actually back down.
Yes.
And it's the same thing on a national level and a world
Absolutely.
level.
That's a good point. Yes. Yes. All right, let's take a short break, and we'll be back with more news from a Tony Cook perspective.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Wednesday, May 24th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second King of Cheonryuk, Hyungjin Moon, and I'm here with Mr. Greg Knoll. And I want to go next to the British government raising the terror threat to the highest critical rating, meaning that the army could be deployed to the streets. The British government has raised the country's terror threat to level critical, indicating the military could be deployed onto UK streets. The move, following an emergency meeting of Cabinet Office briefing room, takes the UK to its highest terror threat level for the first time in a decade. In June 2007, the level was raised from severe, indicating an attack is highly likely, to critical, indicating an attack is expected imminently, following the discovery of multiple car bombs at locations outside nightclubs and airports. The Joint Terrorism Analysis Center, which in turn reports to security services such as MI5, is responsible for the elevated threat level following the Monday night terrorist attack in Manchester that killed 22 and injured over 100. The threat level had previously been downgraded to substantial, meaning an attack is a strong possibility between July 2011 and August 2015. It was then raised to severe in response to events in Iraq and Syria, coinciding with a high point of territorial gain by the Islamic State. The UK has 5 terror levels: low, moderate, substantial, severe, and critical. Since the implementation of the new levels in 2005, the rating has never dropped below substantial. Reports emerging from the UK press also suggest around 5,000 members of the UK's military may be deployed onto British streets in order to deter attacks. Unlike its European counterparts, Britain has little tradition of deploying the military on domestic soil. The last serious deployment was in 2003, when tanks were stationed at Heathrow Airport in an attempt to disrupt a passenger airliner bomb plot. Around 450 troops were also deployed at this time. Prior to that, the last time a major British Army contingent was deployed in Britain was during the Troubles, when Irish Republican terrorists routinely targeted British population centers one of which included the central Manchester area, just 5 minutes from the arena where Ariana Grande's concert ended in terror on Monday night. During the Troubles, the British Army deployed 21,000 troops. So now we have the possibility, I guess, it's still a possibility, I don't think it's happened yet, but suggest around 5,000 members of the UK's military may be deployed onto British streets. So at least the possibility of UK forces being deployed onto the streets. Already the UK is one of the most highly skilled countries in the world, where they have cameras apparently on just about every street corner or something. And now they're cracking down even further, reminding us again why we became independent from them. It's certainly good that we don't have that kind of a society in the United States yet, and that we still have a chance to prevent America from going down that road where the government takes more and more power and deploys more and more resources in order to try to protect the people instead of allowing people to protect ourselves. This is really the kind of story that makes you happy to be living in America, and specifically in Pennsylvania, where we are allowed to carry tools to protect ourselves. Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the king and Cookton were guided to this area of the world after the fall of the Han Mother, specifically so that the Constitution, the Chungalga Constitution, could be given birth here in a county that really believes has the highest number of NRA members, I believe, in the country. So we do have freedoms here. We do feel secure because everybody is like a sheriff. People are literally, it's like everywhere you go, you feel secure because people are armed.
Yeah, and you know, in the village of Newfoundland, there is no police department or police force. And Newfoundland belongs to the township of Dreyer Township, and there's also no police station or police force for Dreyer Township. Dreyer Township does not have police. Dreyer belongs to the county of Wayne, Wayne County, and Wayne County, I'm sure, has a sheriff.
Sheriff, yeah.
But he has a few deputies. But there's no significant police force. So when you call 911, when you call the emergency number, the people who respond are the state police. And I think their average time in this area is something like 45 minutes or something like that. And you hardly ever see them around.
Right.
You know? I think I see a state police car driving by maybe once a week or something.
Yeah.
They rarely come by here because they're not needed so much because we're protecting ourselves. You know, if a bad guy wants to go in and rob somebody's house, he's going to go across the river to New York or New Jersey, where people are unarmed, where people are not allowed to defend themselves. He's not going to be over here. They're smart. A few of them are dumb and they try, and they pay the consequences. You know, but most of these guys have enough brains to go across the river. Where you know, a few days ago, I was in Matamoros, and I had some business in a bank that was across the river in it's only just a few minutes across the river. I could have gone there and come back in 10 minutes. But I was carrying at the time. so I drove all the way back to my house, an hour, and stored my tool, and drove back an hour to go to the bank. So it took me more than 2 hours to accomplish what I could have done in 10 minutes. So after that, I was kind of irritated, so I contacted a lawyer. I contacted a lawyer and said, is there any way that I could have done this in 10 minutes instead of 2 hours? And the lawyer said, nope, there isn't. He said, in New York, it would have been illegal for you to even possess a firearm, much less be carrying it.
So you would have been put in jail.
I would have been put in jail
5 years.
For years. No, I think in New Jersey, I think it's 11 years, actually. I don't know what it is in New York. But I think, because there have been, especially down in Philadelphia, where you can just take the wrong turn on the expressway and wind up in New Jersey. People have been. There was that one woman who got caught.
Yeah.
She went into New Jersey by accident, and got stopped, and actually, after being stopped, told the New Jersey policeman, that she was carrying a firearm, and so she was arrested and convicted and given a sentence of 11 years or something like that. But then, fortunately, the New Jersey governor pardoned her.
Okay.
So if you have is Chris Christie still the new governor of New Jersey? So if you have a Republican governor, maybe that governor will pardon you. But that's a chance that you have to take. So how do we get onto this? But it's this article on British troops being deployed to the streets. So is that going to stop them? What did we just read in the previous article? There's nothing you can do to stop a lone wolf bomber from going in and killing a bunch of people, going into a crowd and killing them. There's nothing you can do.
Especially a government that's allowing people to freely go back and forth from Libya, Sudan,
And
Somalia.
Libya. Did you look at the list?
Yes, it's on the list.
It's on the list.
list of 7 countries that Obama banned
You're right.
and Trump is trying to ban.
Right. And the
But
courts
there's-
will, and
the
the
courts
Ninth
will not-
Circuit, the Ninth Circus Court, as some people keep calling it, the Circuit Court, not the Circus Court, but Circuit Court will not allow Trump to put in place.
And a lot of these countries, this is exactly where workshops and seminars are being held to
Right.
train these lone wolves on how
Yes.
to do effective bombing in their respective countries. So
And
this is
even
a
that will not
huge
protect
threat.
us completely,
It
because
won't.
this guy who pulled off the Manchester attack, it turns out, was born in Britain. So how
But he
can you
did
stop-
travel to Libya.
Yes, he did travel.
And the assumption is maybe he went to a training camp.
More than an assumption, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, that he did go to a training camp. So even
So under
that,
this travel ban, I don't think it would have been allowed for somebody to go to Libya and back again without serious concerns.
I don't think it applies to, for
US
example, in the
citizens?
U.S., I don't think it would apply to a U.S. citizen. I mean, you can't exactly, U.S. citizen comes to a U.S. border, you can't exactly say, well, no, we're not going to accept you because you're not welcome here anymore.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. I mean, one thing good about a U.S. passport is you can always go home. You can the light is always on. You can always go home, no matter how much trouble you cause overseas. At least that's what I've always understood.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
no, you've been a bad boy overseas, so we're not going to let you in. I don't think it works like that.
I think
so
that-
that just proves that,
Yeah.
again, that the government
Yeah.
cannot protect you completely.
Right. I
Right?
think the cat's out of the bag on this. All of now with millions of refugees coming in from terror-prone countries, and England has been allowing these these people to come into their country for years now. I think these countries are almost beyond protection. Because there's just so many. There's such a high population of extreme radical Muslims living in these countries now. I think it's going to be very, very difficult to contain.
It is difficult to contain, and that's why we have to make smart decisions to protect ourselves during this
Right.
period of judgment.
Yeah, but unfortunately, the folks of the UK are not able to do this.
Well, still stay away from crowds. They can do that.
Stay away from a country where you cannot carry your own protection.
Well, these people are trying to drive up the body count. So I think staying away from, of
Yeah.
course, that's not going to protect you completely. And you're right. You're not allowed to carry the tools that you need in order to protect yourself. But at least the least that people can do is to stay away from crowds.
Yeah.
So let's look at.
This is a dangerous time with summer coming up.
Yeah.
All sorts of festivals
Yeah.
and things going on.
Yeah, apparently this is concert season.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that, but now I learned that this is concert season. So your kids are going to be going to concert, parents and grandparents. So teach them, about this kind of a thing. And I would say even if you can dissuade them from going to those kinds of crowded events, that would be a good thing. It's a period of a few years when this judgment is going on, and we need to make smart decisions during these few years and not become a victim in the way that the 22 or so people in Manchester became.
And I think they potentially target these types of events where they feel is a desecration of Allah, right? I would think. I'm not exactly sure that if they target venues that they feel are particularly decadent.
Perhaps
or not.
we don't know the
Yeah.
motive. Yeah, we don't know unless they catch the guy or the guys who were behind this bomber, because he himself is not going to tell us. The guy who built the bomb, and perhaps there are other strategic planners, perhaps behind this guy. Then perhaps they can tell us why this particular venue was targeted. Now, Senator Murphy, Democratic Senator Murphy, has another explanation for the cause of this kind of thing.
Is it Trump's fault?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, you win. I worry that Trump's rhetoric could lead to an attack like Manchester in the U.S., is the headline. During a discussion of the attack in Manchester on Tuesday's broadcast of CNN's Situation Room, Senator Chris Murphy stated that many of us are worried about the rhetoric of the Trump administration because we worry that combined with robust online recruitment might end up in an attack like this happening in the United States. See, so it's not the violent misogyny, violent ideology of Islam.
Yeah.
It is not that. It's Trump. It's not the fact that European nations have let all kinds of people into their countries and let them travel to Libya to learn about how to do this kind of thing and come back and do it. Murphy said that while there has been military success against ISIS in the Middle East, they're still lethal, and the approach to ISIS has to be comprehensive and can't just be about the military. Yeah, let's have a travel ban, right? That would be an idea. He continued, the fact of the matter is many countries in Europe, England, Muslims suffer a de facto segregation. Poor victims. Which sometimes allows for these perversions of Islam, this radicalization to take root. And we have to make sure that we don't allow that to happen here. Murphy further stated, we have got to complement this military strategy with increased intelligence. Less privacy, huh? More power to the NSA. Increased intelligence sharing with Europe, and a commitment to try to stop giving ISIS recruiters recruitment fodder. And so many of us are worried about some of the rhetoric of the Trump administration because we worry that combined with the robust online recruitment might end up in an attack like this happening in the United States. Murphy concluded that because only one terrorist with a bomb strapped to them can create large amounts of destruction, we can never be 100% protected as a country. And we do need to remember here in the United States that there have only been on average a couple of people a year who are killed in terrorist attacks. You are much more likely in this country over the last 10 years to have been killed by a falling object than you are by terrorism. So I think we want to right-size the threat here in the United States while recognizing that we need to step up our efforts to make sure that something like that doesn't happen here.
Travel ban.
Yes. Yeah, that would be a good idea.
That would be helpful. It's not the cure-all.
You're right.
But it's a step in the right direction.
It's a step in the right direction, yes. You can't, it would not have prevented something like this for Manchester from happening. But it is a step in the right direction. And also, I think having the president to travel to places like Saudi Arabia and Israel and Rome and talking to the leaders of different faiths and telling them to speak out against this kind of thing. If you say that this is a radicalization of Islam, a desecration of Islam, then how come the leaders of Islam are not speaking out more strongly against this kind of a thing?
True.
I think certainly challenging them to do that is something that this Senator Murphy ought to encourage. I don't know that he is. I don't think he is. Instead, he's saying that Trump is the problem. The red administration is the problem.
And unfortunately, there's celebration around the parts of the Muslim world that celebrate these types of events, and apparently that was captured on.
ISIS is celebrating it, certainly. And now we have a new article coming in. Bombing probe yields arrests. Here, this just coming in on Fox. Authorities in Manchester, England made 3 additional arrests Wednesday as multiple law enforcement agencies work to neutralize any remaining threat after Monday's suicide bombing at an Ariana Grande concert. It is unlikely Solomon Abedi acted alone. They said Abedi had been known to security forces up to a point. Home Security Amber Rudd said. Britain raised its threat level to critical amid concerns that the 22-year-old Abedi, we already know that, born in Britain, raided his house, chaired a meeting, Prime Minister chaired a meeting, and police also raided and searched a property elsewhere in Manchester where Abedi's brother Ismail is thought to have lived. Officials are probing. They don't tell us who's been arrested. France's Interior Minister commented, in addition to those killed, 64 people are being treated for their wounds. Some of them have been discharged. Soldiers were replacing armed police on Wednesday at sites like Buckingham Palace, 10 Downing Street, and Parliament. So that's where soldiers are being deployed right now. London Police Commander Jane Connors said the goal is to make our city as hostile an environment as possible for terrorists to plan and operate. She said police will also be ready to respond quickly to any incidents with armed officers and have added more armed police patrols. The majority of
what's happening is that rather than the citizens taking responsibility
right.
and standing up, the citizens are saying, okay, the
Let's-
government, you take care of this
right.
problem.
That's exactly what's happening. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening.
And that's really against the whole Chung-il-guk culture and standard. The standard for Chung-il for individuals and families to rise up against evil, not to abandon that responsibility and give it to government.
Yeah, so British police have made 3 additional arrests. This is the newest coming in on that terror incident. But at least this Fox News report is not yet telling us who those 3 are. I think the brother was already arrested prior to this, and I think these 3 would be in addition to that brother. That would be my understanding, but we'll have to wait and see.
Where are the
what's
parents
going
in all of this?
The parents are in Libya, actually.
They're in Libya.
Yeah. Apparently they fled Libya during Gaddafi's time to avoid Gaddafi, and they were in UK, but recently they returned to Libya, as I understand. I think I read someplace else. All right, let's take a break for a minute or so, and we'll be back with more news from a Chung-il-guk perspective.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Wednesday, May 24th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second King of Chung-il-guk, Hyungjin Moon, and I'm here with Mr. Greg Knoll. And during this segment, I want to go into this opinion piece by Todd Stearns, who has a very common sense, a headline: Manchester attack, nations around the world must stop appeasing the Islamists. Sounds like a good thing to do. And here's what he says: the photos and the video and the sounds have become all too familiar. A flash of light, a massive explosion, horrified screams of the dying and wounded. This time in Manchester, England, at a concert filled with young teenagers and their parents. What was supposed to be a night of music and dancing and childhood frivolity, ended in carnage. Horrific injuries, terrible, President Trump said. Dozens of innocent people, beautiful young children, savagely murdered in this heinous attack upon humanity. An untold number of children and their parents were by Islamic radicals killed in the name of the religion of peace. In response, there have been candlelight vigils and calls for peace and understanding, but the Muslim jihadists do not want peace. They want death. Like Trump said, they worship death, not God. That was a very good line in Trump's speech in Saudi Arabia. Or was that in Israel? That was in Israel, I guess he said that. Islamic radicals will not stop until they have killed every last one of us, Christians, Jews, gay and straight. Yes, gay. They're trying to kill gay people. Huh? How's the Democratic Party measure up on that? Huh? The time has come to eliminate this evil from the face of the planet. The time has come for nations around the world to stop appeasing the Islamists. Quote, we must drive out the terrorists and extremists from our midst, obliterate this evil ideology, and protect and defend our citizens and people of the world, unquote, the president said. Quote, all civilized nations must be united in this effort. And we must do our part in the United States. We must secure our borders. We must investigate those who come here from the birthplace of this radical ideology. And we must do whatever is necessary to prevent American blood from being shed on American soil. Yet there are still apologists for the radical Islamists, from Hollywood to the halls of Congress, and also Katy Perry. Yeah? So also I don't know if she's part of any in the record industry. They seem to think we can win over hearts and minds of the jihadists with bouquets of flowers and
Pepsi.
gentle hugs.
Pepsi.
Yes, I was about to say that. Thank you. Yes, Pepsi. That's our secret weapon. That sort of philosophy is not foolish, but it's downright dangerous. Yeah, it gets people killed.
Yep.
Yeah. Children will die. Children have died because of that. Children did die because of that. How many more times do we have to listen to breathless news anchors lecturing us about not rushing to judgment? The Presbyterians and Lutherans are strapping on backpacks filled with nails and blowing themselves up.
A Jew.
The Methodists and Baptists aren't beheading people.
That's right.
The Catholics are not flying jet lighters into buildings. So spare us the politically correct garbage. How many more children must die at the hands of radical Muslims slain in the name of the religion of peace? More citizens of the world must be sacrificed to satisfy the bloodlust of these brutal savages. How many more times, America? How many more times? Todd Starnes is a host of Fox News and Commentary, and so that is what he says about this. Yes, secure our borders and secure our borders and wipe out this ideology.
This is part of Islam's history. It's not a part of, it's the core of Islamic history is conquest.
Many peaceful people do believe in Islam, peaceful, but they need to
Speak
examine.
out.
Well, they
Yeah.
need to examine their religious beliefs. Quite frankly, they need to examine their religious beliefs. I know it's a capital punishment, capital offense to desert Islam and to change their religion away from Islam, but people need to examine their religious beliefs. And
That alone should cause people to think
yeah,
that if you leave your faith, that's subject to the death penalty.
right, that you can get your head chopped off. That in the religion. So if you leave the religion of peace, you will die.
Yeah. There's something fundamentally wrong with that picture. That you're forced to stay in a religion based on fear.
Tucker Carlson, if you care about the U.S., you won't let it become Europe. Tucker Carlson said America must be sure not to become Europe and blindly embrace multiculturalism. He pointed to BBC reporter Katie Kay, Katie Kay, I said, who he said was treating terror attacks as something that happens like the weather. Carlson said it is important for the U.S. to make sure that each person who immigrates embraces American values. If you
I
really,
wonder if that's possible for somebody who deeply believes in the Quran, that if they can really embrace American values. Is that possible?
you can write a paper on that.
I don't think it's possible. American values based on Judeo-Christian values,
Right, yeah.
I don't think is possible to for a true to embrace American values. Now, if America were to give up its Judeo-Christian values, then maybe it would then become a Muslim value country. But I think even an atheistic country or agnostic country, still that would be a problem for a devout Muslim to embrace that culture. So I think it's fundamentally at odds. I don't think the cultures can coexist, as Katy Perry would like to believe. That's just, I think, an unfortunate truth.
There are many Muslim people living in the United States and living in peace in the United States. But maybe one could say that they are not true Muslims.
They are infidels,
Yeah.
according to radical
Yes.
Islam. But is radical Islam, the question is radical Islam true Islam?
Probably so.
Probably so. If
Yeah.
you were to really take the book, the holy book,
Yeah.
and examine it, then really it leads to radical
Yeah,
Islamic
I think that's the
culture.
That's the conclusion that you have to come to when you after you watch David Wood's videos for certain, and he has a lot of sources for being able to say that. He goes into the source texts of Islam, the Quran, and also the other source texts, and reads them in Arabic, in the original language, and is able to show that Islam, at its core, is violent.
Right.
It's violently misogynistic. It is violently anti-gay, and it is violently anti-infidel. So it is violent against everyone except men who are Muslim men. It's violent against everyone except Muslim men.
Right.
And even then, the gay Muslim men also are. It's got violent against gay Muslim men as well. So gay, straight, or straight Muslim men are the only protected class. Everyone else is the target of violence.
Muhammad was the example of this. His own personal life, who they uplift as the final prophet, has all sorts of skeletons in his closet.
Including a 6-year-old bride with whom he had sex at the age of 9. And I'm trying to get into the story, but my computer keeps jumping around to other places.
I think maybe the result of all of this, Tim, is that it's the rise of what God is asking us at this time is the rise of Christian men to stand up against evil. And I think that's really what the King is asking each of us to do in his morning report, is to learn self-defense, to learn the right to bear arms, and to take this responsibility seriously as a way of loving your neighbor. And when I think of America's role in this area of Pennsylvania, that's what I see. I see strong Christian men who believe in the right of self-defense. And I think that's at the core of building God's kingdom, is that a life centered upon Christ and the Constitution will bring about the kingdom of heaven.
Okay, I've almost got this story that how the Manchester bombing is a harbinger for more attacks in the West. This is by the former Defense Secretary and CIA Director Robert Gates, who gave his analysis of what Monday night's horrific attack in Manchester for the future of terrorism in the West. Quote, quote, sadly, Manchester may be a harbinger of more such activities in the West, Gates told Happening Now host Jenna Lee at a conference on Qatar and the Muslim Brotherhood's global affairs. At least so we know that. ISIS claimed responsibility for the suspected suicide attack, but U.S. intelligence officials say they have not verified if the terror group is behind the attack. Gates predicted ISIS will become bolder in a number of ways in the West. Losing the caliphate and control of stronghold cities like Raqqa has not dampened the terrorist drive to attack the Crusaders, Gates said. It just means they'll change their tactics, he concluded. Excuse me for that. So that's what he says in this clip, which we will not play. Let's take a break now, so I can do a little bit of coughing here. And we'll be right back after this.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made USA. Visit car.com today.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Wednesday, May 24th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second King of Cheonju, Hyung-Jin Moon, and I'm here with Mr. Greg Knoll. We want to finish out this hour on the Manchester terror, and then in the next hour we'll be going into other news. Just a final, one of the final stories we can cover here is that the Morrissey is a Manchester-born singer. All these singers that we never heard of. Where have we been? Attacks politicians and the Queen over Manchester response. Controversial singer says MPs remain remote while public bear the brunt of the threat from extremists. The Manchester-born singer Morrissey has hit out at politicians for their reaction to the bombing in his hometown. In his statement, the former Smiths frontman claimed that politicians are safe from attacks while the rest of the country is left vulnerable. Good point. You know, they're all protected by guns and security, but the rest of the country is vulnerable.
And walls.
Yeah, and walls. The MP Joe Cox was murdered by a right-wing extremist last June. Morrissey cited government policy among his complaints, saying the Prime Minister would never change her immigration policy in light of the attacks. It is believed that the bomber, named by police Salman Abedi, was British-born and from Manchester. Morrissey also appeared to suggest that politicians were afraid to refer to Abedi as an Islamic extremist. The claim that politically correct leaders repeatedly refused to mention Islam when referring to terrorist attacks carried out by people holding a violent interpretation of the religion is common on the far right. Why only on the far right? Isn't that kind of the common sense? In recent years, many politicians have acknowledged that the role of such ideology once has become confirmed. But so this is the Guardian, and they're covering this guy, but also refuting him in the same paragraph, while also stressing that it is alien to the vast majority of the religion's adherents, but it is not alien to the core texts of Islam. That's something that the Guardian is pointing out. So this singer wrote on his Facebook page, "In modern Britain, everyone seems petrified to officially say what we all say in private. Politicians tell us they are unafraid, but they are never the victims. How easy to be unafraid when one is protected from the line of fire. People have no such protections." Yeah. Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham says the attack is the work of an extremist. An extremist what? An extreme what? An extreme rabbit? The guy's on fire, yeah. Criticizing the Prime Minister, he claimed that her own life has lived in a bulletproof bubble, and she evidently does not need to identify any young people today in Manchester morgues. The musician added, also, will not break us means that the tragedy will not break her or her policies on immigration. The young people of Manchester are already broken. Thanks all the same, Teresa. Morrissey also criticized the London mayor, Sadiq Khan, who he said had failed to condemn the Islamic State group after it claimed responsibility for the attack.
Interesting.
A link to the terrorist organization has not been confirmed by the security services, who are still working to identify whether or not Abedi worked alone or as part But still, if the Islamic State claimed responsibility, that would be reason to condemn it, even though the Guardian tries to say. So the Guardian is always trying to pull us back from them. In a statement released on Tuesday, Khan said London stands united with the great city of Manchester today after the barbaric attack. This was a cowardly act of terrorism that targeted a concert attended by thousands of children and young people. Who are the really cowards? Who are the real cowards here? Is it the terrorists? They're the cowards, certainly, but also the people who refuse to condemn terrorism and radical Islamism because they are afraid of being called Islamophobic or afraid of being isolated or attacked by the left. They are cowards as well.
That's why the work of David Wood is so important, because he is one of the few that are speaking out on source material, as Muhammad and the book of Quran, the holy book that all Muslims adhere to. And one must look at the source material if one is to understand a culture.
Yeah.
As the King's been saying repeatedly, all culture comes from a book. This is, I think, the logical next step is you can look at all Muslims of the world and say, oh, there's varying degrees of radicalism, but really, what is the common book that they all read? And what does that say about infidels and violence, using violence for conversion? How did Muhammad live his life? I mean, Jesus lived his life, and a certain culture has emerged based on his life and the Holy Scripture. Well, the same should be looked at for Muhammad and the Quran.
Let me just squeeze in what Morrissey said about the Queen. Also in line for criticism from Morrissey was the Queen, who he said had received, quote, absurd praise for her, quote, strong, unquote, against the attack. Yet she does not cancel today's garden party at the Buckingham Palace, for which no criticism is allowed in the Britain of free press, unquote. Wow.
The garden party.
Yeah. She didn't cancel the garden party. That would have been a good gesture, if she really was going to be concerned. But this is, again, I think probably based on the, I don't know if Buckingham Palace is explaining why they didn't cancel that party, but I would expect they would say, oh, we don't want the terrorists to win.
Right.
We don't want to change our behavior. We need to change our behavior, all right? We need to start acting in ways that we can defend ourselves. And yeah, the Queen should have canceled the garden party in sympathy for the people in Manchester, and I think it is shameful that she didn't. If I were a parent whose child died in that situation, or child died in that situation, I would have been comforted if the Queen had canceled
or maybe
that
hold a prayer meeting
Right.
rather than a garden party.
I'm sorry, religion is not allowed.
Oh, okay.
But also, we do need to change our behavior. We cannot be saying that, we're not going to let the terrorists win. The way we let terrorists win is when we allow government to concentrate more power to itself. That's what allows the terrorists to win. That is how the terrorists have won since 9/11. All right? So, but in order to protect ourselves, we need to act smartly. Don't go to crowded areas during this time of judgment. Stay away from crowds and live in places that allow you to carry the tools to defend yourself. All right, let's take a longer break now, and we'll be back in about 5 minutes, and we'll go into other news besides the Manchester tragedy.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for May 24th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for Second King of Cheongguk, Hyungjin Moon, and I'm here with Mr. Greg Knoll as we go through the news this morning from a Cheongguk perspective. And I want to go now to elsewhere in the news, to stories that we have not been able to cover the last couple of days because of all the tragedy in Manchester and other things that have been happening. But especially President Trump submitted his budget to Congress on Tuesday. That was yesterday, and I don't think they teach civics in schools so much, do they, now anymore?
I think it's
So maybe
lost,
some
yeah.
people aren't aware of how the budget comes into being. The president does not dictate the budget, all right? So, and the budget, actually, the laws, all spending bills have to begin in the House of Representatives. And then if it gets passed there, it goes to the Senate, and then they have to pass something. And if the two versions are different, then the two houses of Congress have a conference committee that comes up with a budget that both houses can agree with. And then they both have to pass that again. And then once that's done, then it goes to the president. The president can decide whether he wants to veto. Actually, there are a number of laws that make up the budget, whether he wants to veto them or not. And then hopefully you have a budget by the end of September because the fiscal year of the U.S. government begins on the 1st of October. So why does the president submit a budget at this point in May? This is simply a statement of what he wants, what he's looking for. It's basically, I think you can see it as a kind of a initial bargaining position. And so this is not going to become law. McCain said already that this is dead on. Of course, it's dead on arrival. It was never intended to be that the House of Representatives will say yes, sir, and pass this, and Senate say yes, sir, and pass this, and then it becomes actual law by next week. That's not the purpose of this budget. All right. So let's keep that in mind. It's a statement of the president's priorities, and it's a beginning initial negotiating position. So it says the Trump administration released its fiscal year 2018 budget titled, they actually gave it a title, A New Foundation for American Greatness, on Tuesday morning, which prioritizes money for defense, border security, law enforcement, veterans, and school choice. So those are the priorities of the president. Documents previewed on Monday included a summary of the plan. One document entitled A New Foundation for a Balanced Budget. Whoa, haven't seen that word in Washington lexicon for very much, stated that this budget will reverse the damaging trends from previous administrations and restore the American dream. It asserts that under this budget by 2027, that's 10 years from now, publicly held debt will be reduced to less than 60% of GDP, the lowest level since 2010, when the economic policies of the last administration took effect. Mulvaney reinforced this in a Monday budget preview briefing. He said that the budget will balance in 10 years under this plan. The concept we put in place is a general, what we call the two-penny plan, which is that every single year we see those reduced by 2 cents on the dollar every single year. The document emphasizes that there are no cuts to core Social Security benefits and no cuts to Medicare. Another document entitled A New Foundation for American Jobs laid out a vision for regulatory welfare and tax reform. The summary states that fiscal year 2018 budget projections include the congressional resolutions that roll back certain Obama administration regulations. This, the summary states, will generate annual cost savings of approximately $600 million to $1.2 billion a year. Now, it says that the document emphasizes there are no cuts to Medicare. And the Democrats in the coming days and weeks and months are going to say President Trump is trying to cut Medicare. And there was actually the budget director here was explaining in one clip that I saw where he says that the word cuts means something different in Washington from what it means to the rest of the country. Mm-hmm. To us, if I an electric bill of $100, let's say, if I were to cut that, that means that next month I want it to be $99, right? That's a cut. In Washington, a cut is something different. in Washington, $100 this year, and you spend $100 on the same thing next year, that's a cut. Or even if you spend $102 next year, that's still a cut. Because the Congressional Budget Office comes up with these figures that says, oh, if you're spending $100 this year, then according to existing law, you should be spending $106 next year. So if you only spend $102, then that's a cut, even though you only, so cut is defined differently. So when this budget says that it's not cutting Medicare, what it means is that it's not reducing the absolute amount of Medicare, so that people who are receiving Medicare are not going to be receiving anything less than what they are already receiving. But Democrats will still call it a cut, even though people actually may receive more than what they're actually. Democrats will still call it a cut, because people will not be receiving as much as the Democrats would like for them to receive. It's a cut.
Right.
So just be aware that in the language of Washington, you see, they speak a different language in Washington. You have to be aware of this. They speak a different language in Washington. English. They speak Washingtonese. And so the word cut means something different there. And I hope that people outside the Beltway, outside of Washington, understand this. And so that they are not taken in by the misinformation that the Democrats and the anti-Trumpers, even the anti-Trumpers within the Republican Party, are going to be spread in the coming weeks and months about this budget. The budget reforms the federal SNAP program for an estimated combined savings of $193 billion over 10 years. Temporary assistance for needy families reforms are estimated to save $21 billion over 10 years. The OMB document states that welfare reforms in the proposed budget will save $270 billion over 10 years. The tax reform element of the budget assumes several reforms laid out in the Trump administration's recently released tax reform outline. This includes paring down tax brackets from 7 categories to 3, cutting the business tax rate to 15%, and making many small businesses eligible for the 15% rate. A third document, a new foundation for a secure nation, laid out an increase in defense spending and spending on border security, immigration, and enforcement. Defense spending would be increased by $54 billion, or 10% more than the 2006 CR President Barack, that's the continuing resolution President Barack Obama signed into law, and the 2018 budget cap. Border security and immigration enforcement is allocated $2.6 billion for new infrastructure and technology investments in 2018 to give frontline law enforcement officers the tools and technologies they need to deter, deny, identify, track, and resolve illegal activity along the border. The president's budget assumes passage of the House-passed American Health Care Act, as well as tax reform, though a tax reform plan is still being formulated. The full plan was posted to the Office of Management and Budget website at 11 a.m. Eastern. At the same time, Director Mike Mulvaney began a briefing on the details. And so they're saying they're going to have a balanced budget in 10 years. Mulvaney was head of the Office of Budget and Management, says that the budget will balance in 10 years under this plan, assuming, of course, President Trump at the most is only going to be in the president for 8 years.
It's pretty safe.
So it's safe. So if it doesn't work in 10 years, he will no longer be in office. But that's how politicians work, all right? That's how politicians work. It was the next guy's fault.
Wasn't there a balanced budget amendment in the not-so-distant past?
There was talk about one, yes. There was talk about one.
Again, it's the way Washington interprets numbers, I think.
Yeah, I'd just like to remind people and maybe inform people that are not aware that the Chinese Constitution, first of all, limits all government revenue to 10% of GDP. Right now, that is federal government, that's federal revenue. Right now, the U.S., if you add all the local and state and local government revenue, it's much more. But if you just look at the federal government revenue, it's somewhere between 20 and 25% right now. And so the Chonyu Constitution, if it were enacted in the United States, would reduce the government revenue by more than half, by almost 2/3. And it says that the government cannot borrow for the general operation of the government during peacetime. Of course, we wouldn't have to worry about it in the United States right now because we're constantly at war.
Well, that's the thing. The war on terror is a war that's perpetual.
And the war on terror would be unconstitutional because you could not declare war on non-state actors, such as terror or poverty or obesity or drugs or war against nonsensical approaches to terrorism or something like that. You cannot declare war and that kind of thing. But at least the Constitution would say that in peacetime you have to have a balanced budget, and because if you go above what is budgeted, then because you cannot borrow, so what do you do if you go above the budget? Well, then it says you have an across-the-board freeze of all government spending.
Isn't it amazing that 60%, the goal is to get down to where personal debt is 60% of GDP?
Publicly held debt, yeah.
Publicly
held debt, yeah, it would be 60% of GDP. That which is where it was in 2010 before the Obama administration policies came into effect, is what it says, yeah. So the goal is to undo the bad effects of Obama administration driving up debt to a high level of GDP.
And your average citizen in Maryland and Hawaii is $67,000 in debt.
Yeah.
That's an interesting number.
Yeah, that was.
It wasn't that long ago where Americans didn't have debt of like that.
Right. I can remember when credit cards were a novel thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I once met a rich man who had a credit card. That was an amazing experience for me. I was just out of college, and this guy was boasting about how he had this special status where he was allowed to have a credit card.
Now they get freshmen in high school getting on credit cards.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Co-signing with the parents, of course.
Yeah.
Just like college loans are now co-signed with parents.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's take a break, and we'll be back with other news from a Chonyu perspective right after this.
Debt is a huge...
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Wednesday, May 24th of 2017. And I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Chonyu, Hyungjin Moon. And I'm here with Mr. Greg Noh, who was just pointing out that we have not heard anything about Trump being impeached
Yeah.
for the past 24 hours. Where's Maxine Waters?
What happened?
Who killed Maxine Waters? Huh? What happened
Even
to her?
John Podesta said that.
Now, we'll get into that
yeah,
later.
okay.
Right?
Where's,
Let's
where's
not get
impeachment?
sidetracked. No, don't. Let's not get sidetracked. I'm in charge here. We'll get into that later. Yes, but yes, something has happened to the impeachment drama, and we'll get into it a little bit later. Apparently, Maxine Waters has been kidnapped, or someone is holding her in a basement somewhere. But she has not called for Trump's impeachment now for how many days?
I think it's been at least 48 hours.
It's been at least 48 hours. Yes, yeah. So they need to investigate that. Where is she? What basement is she being held in? President Donald Trump's budget proposal forecasts that the administration's policies will accelerate the American economy into an era of 3% growth for as far as the eye can see, which is pretty far, I think. That's unleashed a torrent of criticism from mainstream economists who can't stand the idea that Trump could grow the economy at such a fast pace. And we'll see why. They have good reason. According to the budget documents released by the White House Tuesday, the U.S. gross domestic product will reach an annual growth rate of 3% by 2021 and then continue growing at that pace. This economic acceleration is the key to the Trump administration's plans to cut taxes while also reducing the budget deficit. Quote, everything is keyed on getting us back to 3%, unquote, White House Budget Director Mike Mulvaney told reporters this week. Even though the average growth rate since the post-World War II era has been 3.2%, the average since the post-World War II era has been 3.2%. The administration's critics are skeptical or even mocking of its GDP forecast. They point out that the last time the economy grew at 3% in a year was 2005. And ever since the Great Recessions, the economy appears to be on a permanent slower track. Official estimates from the Office of Management and Budget and the Federal Reserve, as well as those by many private forecasters, see growth closer to 2% or even lower. Former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers said it was only possible to believe in the Trump administration's growth forecast if you believe in tooth fairies and ludicrous supply-side economics. For former OMB head Jim Nussle said 3% is unrealistic. Alice Rivlin, former vice chair of the Federal Reserve and founding director of the Congressional Budget Office, was more polite, saying that more responsible projections would forecast growth around 2%. The backlash against Trump's growth forecast stands in marked contrast to the reaction to the assumptions in Barack Obama's first budget. The Obama administration's economic projections were constructed by economist Christina Romer, the head of the White House Council of Economic Advisors. Romer assumed GDP would grow by, drumroll,
3? Could it be?
3.2%
Oh my goodness. Shocking.
in the second year of the administration, followed by 4%,
Wow. 4%.
and then 4.6%.
And did the critics come out?
They were all believing in tooth fairies back
Okay,
then,
I
apparently.
see.
As it turned out, growth never rose above 3% during the Obama administration.
Surprise, surprise, surprise.
This failure may explain why so many mainstream economists think 3% growth is out of reach. In the wake of because if Obama couldn't do it, nobody can do it. You know? I mean, he's the greatest president we've ever had and ever will have.
And has had so much business experience, too.
Yes.
Creating
And
jobs
If he couldn't get 3%,
Right.
absolutely no one can.
with his great negotiating skills.
Right. In the wake of the financial crisis and the Great Recession, policymakers at the Federal Reserve launched a series of interventions intended to stimulate more vigorous economic growth. Even when combined with a rising federal budget deficit, however, those monetary policies moves had much less effect than expected. How is that possible? The government wasn't able to,
Stimulate
nothing
the
the
economy.
government could do, because after all, growth comes from the government, right? It's not private entrepreneurs such as yourself that provide jobs. It's the government that provides jobs, right? So the government did everything they could do, and it didn't happen, so obviously it can't happen, right? People have PhDs on this kind of thing. If the PhDs say it's impossible, how dare Trump say it is? Many economists concluded that we had entered an era of long-term slower growth. Larry Summers famously described it as an era of secular stagnation. Well, that sounds really scholarly, right? Secular stagnation. It must be true.
He probably wrote a book on that.
That's probably the title of his book. there always was a hint of self-aggrandizing rationalization. Oh no, in this view, when the main economists saw that the economy was not responding to monetary policy, and as strongly as their theory said it should, they decided something was wrong with the economy rather than their theory. Of course, I mean you got PhDs that are mile high, and saying that this is how it's supposed to be. Obviously, something's wrong with the economy, not with the theory. It was the American economy that was broken rather than American economics. The economy was broken, not the economics. Trump's budget once provides a challenge to their views. If it turns out that a combination of tax cuts, better trade policies, a revival of manufacturing, and regulatory reform, and closing the borders, can spur faster economic growth, mainstream economists will appear to be the court of a naked emperor. Not only will our policies have been proven ineffective, their diagnosis of our economic malaise will have been shown to be wrong. No wonder they are so mad. No wonder they hate Breitbart so much. No wonder they hate Breitbart.
It seems like this is really creating the groundwork to oppose President Trump's tax cuts.
Yeah. Well, it's an extension of their opposition to Trump, because Trump can do no good by definition, and certainly he must not be allowed to do better than Obama.
Right.
And it's about creating the groundwork for opposing him in the midterm elections next year, and trying to gain the House seats necessary to pass articles of impeachment, because they can't get him out by then. They certainly want to get him out before the end of his first term, because the longer he stays in office, the more good he's going to do for the American people,
right.
for the people that they despise and hate. And the more he's going to prove their theories to be wrong, the more he's going to undermine their privilege and position, going to cut off their sources of income, so they just cannot stand it, and so they're doing everything they can to try and get rid of him. Any more thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that's why the impeachment drive is on, and we need to continue our prayers for President. His life, I'm sure, just like John F. Kennedy, life was in danger because he wanted to change fundamental ways in which Washington operated through the Federal Reserve and other things. That President Trump's life is in danger. Certainly his political life is in danger right now, but I think his physical life is something we need to be prayerful about. And because he is really going into the devil's nest and shaking things up. He is not continuing life as usual in Washington. He really wants to shake the very foundation upon which Washington stands. So as my wife's bumper sticker says, loud and bold, please pray for President Trump. I think that's one thing we can do. We can offer, as those who are close to the king, what we can do as sanctuarians around the world is pray for him and offer a hedge of protection for his health and his family's health, and to allow him to continue draining the swamp. I think this is, he's got an enormous task ahead of him. This is 60 to 80 years of bureaucracy that has been built up in Washington, D.C., and part of draining the swamp is reducing regulation, reducing the tax burden upon average American citizens. I know myself, I work, close to 50% of everything that I do, money that I earn goes right to the government, supporting things that I do not morally agree with. And I think part of this budget is reduction in expenses toward Planned Parenthood.
Yes.
So I agree with that 100%.
Yes, it is.
Along with other reductions.
So McCain, talking about impeachment, I was just looking up impeach on Google News. I could find Maxine Waters, most recent.
What would we do without Maxine?
But she's not. She's not there.
She's not in
there.
the news?
Yeah, she's not in the news.
must be on
Apparently,
vacation or
I swear, I think she's being held in the basement someplace, incommunicado. That's my conspiracy theory. But McCain is that calls for impeachments are not rational.
Who said that?
McCain, John McCain, the anti-Trumper
Even McCain.
Republican.
Modesto, McCain. Wow,
Yeah.
now we're hearing a chorus of people. What about Lawrence Tribe? Has he reduced his, redacted his statement?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. All right, let's take a break, and we'll come back with more interesting news from a Chonico perspective after this break.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Wednesday, May 24th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyungjin Moon, here with Greg Knoll as we go through some of the interesting news this morning. Here's John Podesta. John Podesta, was the campaign manager for Hillary Clinton, and also he was, pretty sure he was chief of staff of President Bill Clinton. But here in a one-on-one interview with the Washington Post 2020 Live on Tuesday, John Podesta says he does not see any indication that President Donald Trump will be impeached, despite the fact that so many in his party are calling for it.
His party.
So maybe it's John Podesta that's holding Maxine water in his basement. I don't know. I see no sign that there's any likelihood that he'll be impeached. Podesta, who recently joined the Washington Post as a columnist, told the publication's Karen Tumulty, issuing an indirect testament to the loyalty of the GOP. Podesta added, the Republican leadership has decided we're in the boat with him, and the boat's going to sink, and we're going to sink with it, but we can't really throw him out of the boat. So they've decided to, as I've said before, Velcro their fate to him. I think they must be waking up in a sweat at night thinking about what the prospects of that are, but I think there's no chance that the House would mount the kind of serious investigation that would lead to impeachment. I remember, what was it, in October, these same Washington Post and other media were reporting that Republican candidates were distancing themselves from candidate Trump at the time, because Trump was going to lose the election and they didn't want to be associated with him because that would cause them to lose their seats as well, elections as well. This is what these people were saying in October.
The smart people.
The smart people. I'm sure Podesta was one of them. Well, guess what? Trump won the election, and the people who stuck with Trump also won their elections.
And I predict right to you today, there will be a landslide victory for the Trump supporters in 2018.
All right, you heard it here first. This is first, right? Yes, you heard it here first on the King's Report on May 24th, not 27th. Representative Maxine Waters, oh, there she is, has been openly leading calls for the president to be impeached. Yes, we know that. Several Democrats have invoked the 25th Amendment. That's the one where it says that if the president goes crazy or is incapacitated, then you can just go ahead and replace
Doesn't
him.
he look insane in Saudi Arabia and Jerusalem, all these places, his world tour? He looks like a man of total, he's lost his mind.
As a springboard to introduce legislation that would allow former presidents and vice presidents to determine if Trump is mentally unfit for office.
It's just so insane.
They would form a Supreme Council, I guess, wouldn't they? These former presidents and vice presidents. Addressing Tumulty's question on the 25th Amendment, I said, do you really think Mike Pence and Betsy DeVos are going to sign that paper relieving the president of his duty? I don't see that either. In an interview with Breitbart News,
This is embarrassing.
yeah, this is Los Angeles-based cardiologist and internist Dr. Afshin Amrani said he thinks it is wrong for people, and especially politicians, to belittle mental illness because they have a political agenda, adding psychiatric name-calling and bullying is against their professional code. They should be exposed for what they are. I can guarantee an overwhelming majority of them voted against Trump. You know, where else if you have an enemy, call him out of his
Soviet
mind.
Union?
Soviet
Yeah.
Union, Nazi Germany.
Right.
North Korea does that.
Yeah.
Yeah. China does that, especially. China does that a lot.
So it's an archangel tendency.
Yeah. It's what you do when you have all this power. And remember, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Lord Acton. And so whenever you have concentration of power, you have corruption to the extent that the power is concentrated. And this kind of thing is an indication of that, saying that your political enemies are psychologically deranged and therefore they have to be removed from office or put into mental institutions. This is an indication of the corruption of power. And that is what these people calling for the 25th Amendment to be put in effect are doing. These are certain elements within the Democratic Party. Podesta is distancing himself from it, but other Democrats are certainly not distancing themselves. I think even some Republicans would like to see that. And it is a corruption of power. It is the epitome of a corruption. One of the, I don't know if there are probably more epitomes, but it is a scandalous indication of the corruption that by the concentration of power. That is why in the tyrannical concentration, power is disseminated. Power is disseminated. Where as much as possible, where in politically and in the military and in the media, power is decentralized, and where the sovereignty lies of families, and so it is a kingdom of kings. That means that means that sovereignty is decentralized. It lies with the families. And that is why that is a much better constitution than the one that we have now in the United States of America. So this kind of a thing where Democrats are able to try and remove a president because they can claim from political motives that he is out of his mind or unfit for office. That is just the worst type of that is a new low for American politics. We know the American political system is broken. That this is a new low that these people are stooping to. Any thoughts on this, Greg?
Yeah, what comes to mind is what the King's been talking about the last few days is I think a lot of people in Washington, because of Trump's position on pedophiles, I think there's so much dirt in Washington that a lot of people fear their political reputations are going to be totally exposed. If Trump continues his rooting out of pedophiles in the highest circles, then I think a lot of these people who are the most vocal against Trump, including calling him insane and wanting him impeached, are perhaps the ones that have these kind of connections to Epstein and various things going on in dark places. So I think this kind of insanity that has really never been seen before in Washington is probably the result of Trump going in and stirring things up.
Absolutely, yes. He's not stirring things up as we had hoped in some areas. We're a little bit disappointed in some areas, such as the backtracking that he's done on NAFTA and also other areas as well. But we hope that he gets to all that. Before we end today, I want to maybe go to kind of the lighter side of news.
Is there a lighter side?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's talk
Please,
about
Tim, please.
the Japanese Yakuza. All right. This is an area
What
that
about North Korea?
North Korea is quiet. Yeah.
Well, I heard there was another battleship going into the.
Two, yes, we reported on that. The
Okay.
USS Ronald Reagan is now also in the Korean waters,
Okay.
along with the Carl Vinson, which is staying there longer than originally scheduled. Not battleship, but aircraft carriers with their strike groups. And
People are saying this move is a pre-war kind of maneuver.
well, we'll see. We'll see. We don't.
Pre-attack,
It's hard to. But it's not speculating.
Okay.
But let's go to the lighter side of news. Is that okay?
Okay.
I want to talk about the Japanese yakuza who are starving to death. Life as a Japanese yakuza mobster is getting so hard that some are resorting to shoplifting food to stay in business.
This is great.
What would Tony Soprano?
That's an embarrassment to
Yes.
any mobster, any legitimate mobster.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a new low.
That's a new low. Two members of an organized crime gang were arrested for allegedly trying to steal grocery items worth $683 at a mall in the central Japanese city of Nagoya, police told AFP on Wednesday. They are members of an affiliated gang group of the Kobe Yamaguchi-gumi, a police spokesman said, referring to an organization that split off from the country's biggest Yakuza crime syndicate, Yamaguchi-gumi, in 2015. The gangsters, aged 52 and 59, reportedly tried to steal 198 items, including melon, rice, eel, and prepared dishes. Eel, well, no wonder they got caught. That's expensive. In the company of their gang boss, the Asahi and Mainichi dailies reported.
This kind of shame and dishonor is not going to go well.
One of the men told police that the group is so poor, members have to steal food, the Mainichi said. The Japan's Yakuza blossomed from the chaos of post-war Japan into multi-billion-dollar criminal organizations involved in everything from gambling, drugs, and prostitution to loan sharking, protection rackets, and white-collar crime. They were long tolerated as necessary evil for ensuring order on the streets and getting things done quickly, however dubious the means. Unlike the Italian mafia or Chinese triads in other countries, Yakuza have long occupied a peculiar gray area in Japanese society. They are not illegal, and each group has its own headquarters in full view of police. But waning social tolerance, a weak economy, and steadily falling memberships have hurt their bottom line. Kids today, they just don't know, what it's like. Well, actually, it may be related to the disappearance of the samurai tradition in Japan. It could be that. Have these young children, not say children, but young people, young adults even, in Japan that are called otaku. These are people who basically stay at home and play video games and read porn magazines all day and don't get a job and stay in their parents' homes often. And, so how can you expect that kind of a generation to become Yakuza?
What about the samurai traditions? Are they also being affected by this kind of new cultural shift?
Well, I would suspect, yeah. I think just the rise of the otaku is an indication of how much the samurai tradition has waned. So stiffer anti-gang regulations are also making life a struggle as regular businesses are banned from dealing with mobsters who struggle to even open a bank account or receive mail at their office.
Rehab is what they need. They need to learn new job skills.
New job skills, yeah.
A government program is necessary for
Such
ex-gangsters.
high-profile split of the Yamaguchi-gumi, yeah. So
I think we need to have sympathy, Tim.
I'm resisting temptation right now to tell war stories about the Japanese mobster.
Oh, tell us one.
All right, this is the lighter side of news. All right. So my father was a missionary.
I thought you were going to say he's going to be a mobster.
No. But don't worry, a mobster is coming in pretty soon here. But this, this is something that happened in the 1960s, I guess. Yeah, this is in the first half of the 1960s. My family was in a town in kind of a backwater Japan in the 1960s, And for a long time, we were the only white people in the town. Then the second white person to appear in the town was an American professor in the Fulbright program. The U.S. government sends out professors to various countries, and so this professor came alone to our town and started teaching in the local university. And pretty soon he said, "Oh, my wife has come from America," and he said, "When you look at her, you may think that she looks Oriental, but she's American." And so he, introduced his wife to my father and so forth. And sure enough, she did look pretty Oriental, pretty Japanese, as a matter of fact. Then one day, some months later, this man, the professor, comes running to my father, begging for help. Because it turns out that he had shacked up with the mistress of the Yakuza boss.
Wow.
And I guess he was in prison at the time. And he came out, the Yakuza boss. Yeah, the Yakuza boss was in prison at the time. But he got out of prison. And now he was coming to my father for desperate help. Listen, no matter where you go in Japan, they will find you and they will kill you. Get out of the country now. Don't go back home. Just, even if you think you can go to a big city and disappear, no, you cannot. Because this is a nationwide organization, and they will find you and they will kill you. And so he left our home, and we never heard from him again. I don't know. He may be listening to this broadcast, or he may be in spirit world, having been killed by the Yakuza. We don't know. But this was the Yakuza during the heyday. You did not mess with them. Now they are reduced to stealing food, and I'll bet that even if a Fulbright professor shack up with their women, they probably can't do anything about it. So that is how far the mighty have fallen. I guess that is
The first shall be last.
that is the modern. That is the lesson of that story, I suppose.
Wow.
Yes. But you know what? Other things, and this is for young ladies or young men too. When you go to a lot of places in Japan, there are some public baths in Japan. There are a lot more in Korea, but a lot less in Japan, but a few in Japan. And I visited one in 2014 before I came here. Just before I came here, I was in Japan and I went to a public bath. And there's a sign that says, no one with tattoos allowed. Because tattoos are the mark of Yakuza. Because in Japan, that is the association that people make. So just to let you know, if you go to
Japan is not a tattoo culture.
Yeah,
Only for gang members.
it may have changed now. I don't know, because they're also very much influenced by America. So maybe that young people now are getting tats. I don't know. But certainly, I think still a lot of places will say, a lot of restaurants and establishments will say, no one with tattoos may enter.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
That would be discrimination in America.
Would it?
I don't know.
How would you say that? Tattoophobia? Is that how it would be? Tattoophobia or something like that? Tatophobia? Tatophobia.
Of course,
That's it.
restaurants would be empty. All establishments would be empty. Almost everybody has a tattoo these days.
Almost everybody?
It's incredible. It's become just in so mainstream. Maybe everybody's a member of a gang.
Maybe everybody's. That's what has happened to the. That is what has happened to the Yakuza. Maybe it's spread. It's spread. It hasn't disappeared. It has spread. There was some other news I wanted to get here. Let's take a short break while I'm coming up with this other story that I'm trying to get. We'll be back in a minute with more news from the lighter side of the Choniguk perspective.
At break of day, in hope we rise.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the night and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Wednesday, May 24th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the Second King of Chanuguk Hyungjin Moon, and I'm here with Mr. Greg Knoll. You know, if you can't have tools for self-defense, if you can't carry firearms, sometimes it's good just to have a good dog, all right? Here's Athens. I'm going to assume that this is Athens, Georgia. I believe that's the case. Athens family pug chases off trio of armed home invaders. A small family pet chased off a trio of armed home invaders Sunday night after they attempted to rob residents at Woodland of Athens condominiums off Barnett Shoal Roads, Athens Clark County Police said. The suspects appeared to be young males between 14 and 16 years old. Those are the bad guys, all right? Their intended victims, a 20-year-old resident and his parents, aged 52 and 57, were in the living room of the home with the front door open and blocked only by a baby gate, according to police. That's also something to keep in mind for self-defense. About 10 p.m., one of the young bandits kicked down the baby gate.
Badass.
And entered the home waving a handgun and saying, "Give it up, I'm not playing," according to the police report released Monday morning. That's when the family pet came to its owner's protection, according to the report. While pugs are often described as a small dog friendly to strangers, this particular pug reportedly ran barking towards the home invaders, who turned tail and fled, according to police. I think kicking down the baby gate was probably a hint to the pug. Nothing was stolen and no one was injured, the police said. But what about the pride of the two kids? That was hurt, I bet. The would-be victims were unable to provide detailed descriptions of the suspects. We'll interview the pug. Because their faces were concealed by their shirts, police said. At least two of the suspects were armed with guns. The victims told police.
The pug was armed.
Maybe the pug was armed.
I think it's just the look at the pug. You know, the face of the pug is kind of frightening.
Yeah. But apparently he went barking, and I guess he bravely charged the people waving the guns. Didn't want to back down for that.
I guess they're criminals in training.
They're criminals in training. Yeah. This is not so lighter side, but here cops say a clown flees on a scooter after slashing man to death with a bladed glove. Oh, let's take a look at that. Man in clown makeup with bladed gloves, accused of killing man near Torchy's Tacos. Where is this? This is Colorado. Denver police have arrested a man who was wearing clown makeup when he allegedly stabbed and slashed a 29-year-old man to death with a glove that had blades attached to the end of each finger. Christian Lee, that's a kind of terrorism in itself, isn't it? Christian Lee Golzal, 36, allegedly attacked the victim at 12:49 a.m. Tuesday following an argument near Torchy's Tacos on West 11th Avenue. The Denver Coroner's Office identified the victim as Brian Lucero, 29. The cause of death was stab wound, according to a Coroner's Office news release. Witnesses told police that the suspect, wearing white clown makeup, accented with black streaks on the face, suddenly began threatening the victim with a glove with blades that were 2 to 3 inches long. They were near the corner store at West 10th Avenue. Gozo began pummeling the victim, who tried to dodge the blows, the police report says. The victim eventually punched the suspect, who then yelled at the victim and followed him to Torchy's. The two were the only ones in the restaurant parking lot. The victim collapsed in the northeast parking lot of the Torchy's business. The report says Gozo allegedly fled on his scooter. The police report says police spotted a man on Denver Public Schools halo camera riding a scooter matching the suspect's appearance in the 900 block of Galapagos Street. You know, this reminds me that, and especially for people, obviously if this man had been carrying a firearm, he could have defended himself, but also, I guess verbal jujitsu that allows you to de-escalate a conflict is also very important, so that conflicts do not develop into deadly force encounters. That's also very important, I think, and especially if you're carrying a weapon, that's especially necessary because you don't want to have to resort to that weapon because it is a last resort. But to be able to, if you're in a conflict, to be able to de-escalate and avoid and get yourself away from that conflict is very, very important. And that's another way in which we can preserve ourselves during this time of judgment. Just to stay away from crowds, stay away from conflicts. Don't get into arguments with people at 12:49 a.m. in at a taco store parking lot. These kinds of common sense things that we have to do. These are common sense things that we have to do, I think, in order to preserve ourselves for the next few years that we are going through this a period of judgment, so that we can survive to build God's kingdom on this earth. There's going to be a lot of incidents. A lot of people are going to get killed. And we need to think seriously about our daily routine and about where we live and how we live and what we do for a living, so that we can be one of the ones that are active in the rebuilding. All right, thank you very much for joining us this Wednesday. And I'm going to try and end this before I sneeze. This is May 24th of 2017, on this 8th year of Chungi, 4th month, 29th day by the heavenly calendar. The king will be back in this seat tomorrow morning, Thursday morning, where he will again give us his Rima and his view on the news from a Choni Group perspective. Thank you very much for joining us. Be safe. God bless. Godspeed. And may thy kingdom come.